Ever since I can remember, I have traveled. It was not until about 6 years ago that I made my first trip out of the country to Europe. I fell in love. I told my parents that once I got to college, I just had to study abroad. They've always just played along, thinking I would never actually go out of the country by myself, but I was determined to make it happen. So, about 5 short years later, I was walking through the TEC at SAM one day and saw a flyer to study abroad in Italy. Italy? I had to go. I could not think of a more perfect spot to study, and I had never been to Italy before. I signed up, and before I knew it, I was purchasing my plane ticket to Istanbul, Turkey, and then to Naples, Italy. I had a countdown on my phone, and before I knew it, we were on our flight to Turkey and off to Italy for 3 weeks. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine I would get this experience. The thing that sold me on this study abroad was the fact that not only did we get to learn abroad, we got to teach abroad. Something I have always been curious about, and something that I knew I would never get to experience as an undergraduate again. Not only was I so excited about traveling and doing what I love abroad, we also got to be a part of something called ISL, which is International Service Learning. One of my favorite things in the world to do is to volunteer. So could this experience be any more perfect? I don't think so. I expected that I would come out of this study abroad with some experience in a classroom and some knowledge about the Italian culture. But what I learned was so much more. I found that I can be a lot more confident teaching in front of a class of 20-something students because I am confident that in a classroom is where I should be, and I absolutely love it. Of course, we had some ups and downs in our class, so I also found that not for 1 second can you be off your game as a teacher in a classroom. Through teaching English to students that didn't speak the same language as their first, I learned that not every student learns the same way. This is something I've always known, but not been able to actually see. This tested me a little bit because I had to come up with different ways to present the information or word my instructions. I've always only ever been at camps or in classrooms where every student spoke English and there was no language barrier. It also forced me to be more clear and concise with my instructions. And since I want to be a special education teacher, I think this is something that will be very practical for me. Not every special ed student communicates the same way, so having experience teaching EFL students will help me in my future, I believe. We had the 12-year-old students, so I also learned that I really enjoyed teaching the older students. I have always thought that I want to teach the younger grades, such as 1st or 2nd, and now I'm thinking that I would also enjoy teaching the older grades, such as 5th and 6th. Through teaching the Italian children English in Italy, it made me realize how difficult it must be for them to learn the language. I was putting myself in their shoes. I had no knowledge of Italian, and it was really hard for me to pick up the language, even though the students were teaching me some of it, and I was in Italy. That let me see how smart these kids are and how hard they are working to learn English. Overall, I learned so much practical experience through this trip, and I am certain that it will help me in my future endeavors as a classroom teacher. Not only was the school experience amazing, the Naples experience was amazing. Being in a city that was so rich with culture and history made this study abroad one to remember. I fell in love with the city of Naples. The people, food, and culture were just amazing. It was one of the most beautiful cities I have ever been in, and not because of the way it looked, but because of what was underneath the looks of the city. Like our tour guide said, there were tons of little gems hidden underneath what looked like a dirty city. The thing that made me fall in love with Naples was the fact that we got to truly experience the city. We got to live there for a little over 2 weeks and just sit back and check out how the Italian people lived. Having a local tour guide and going to places that locals go also helped us be truly immersed in the Italian culture. The reason this travel experience was unlike any other experience I have ever had traveling is because I didn't just see the pretty touristy things. I saw the culture and the way the Italians in Naples live. I also just happened to fall in love with gelato and espresso. Naples is certainly a city I will be returning to one day, and one I hold very fond memories of. The experience I had at Adelaide Ristori and in Naples were such a great one. The kids were the sweetest, and I can only hope that I made even a fraction of an impact on their life that they did on mine. I would not trade the school students or people for the world that I got to interact with.